I've been receiving a lot of questions about tension when playing the trumpet and other brass instruments. There is actually one fundamental thing that, if you get it right, it solves the vast majority of physical tension-related issues. Want to cut out the tension and play easier? Let's get started. Hi, I'm Brian from Airflow Music. Alongside publishing our books for brass players, we've been producing a bunch of videos with tips to make brass playing easier for you. So if you're new here, please subscribe to the Airflow Music channel so you're notified of all of our videos. Lots of brass players complain about physical tension when they're playing, and it manifests in all sorts of ways. Some of the common ones include excess tension in the throat, chest or face, as well as lip tension, of course. In the vast majority of cases, the initial root cause of these is the same. It's all down to air. Now, I can almost hear all of your eyes rolling, but before you switch this video off at this point, please hang in there for a moment. More specifically, it's about striking a balance between how you breathe your air in, engage your breath support, and then release the air to make the note. The notion of balance is an important one here because the tension is caused, how and wherever it happens for you, by an imbalance in your physical system of breathing and blowing. Even though there should be a fluid single process from inhalation to exhalation, let's break it down step by step. Breathing and breath support. I've talked a lot about breathing this past year, going back to my very first videos on this channel. My overall advice remains the same. We need to breathe and engage in the same natural way we do when we're doing anything physical. That means starting a relaxed inhale, thinking O to encourage an open throat, and engaging our core muscles so our stomach or abdominal area doesn't push outwards, but instead our chest lifts up as our lungs fill with air. It's this engaging the core part that tends to confuse people. It's not just engaging your abdominal muscles, but actually more like engaging all the way down as if you're preparing to lift something heavy. Doc Reinhardt describes the push of the exhalation lift as starting all the way down in the pelvic area. However, in modern parlance, it's more indelicate than that. I'll leave the late great Dizzy Gillespie to explain in the video clip that first helped it make sense for me.
I was on NBC and this lady was asking to say, "You trumpet players, you have a lot more wind." And I said, "No, we don't. We don't have any more wind than anybody else. We have the same amount of wind that's in your body." It's in the... He said, well, what about your, how does the strength come?" I said, "Well, everybody says that the strength comes from your diaphragm." She said, "Yes, I heard that before." I said, "But that's not true." She said, "Well, where does the strength come from?" I said, "You really want to know?" She said, "Yes." I said, "It comes from your asshole." Right on NBC, man. My wife heard it. She said, "You're on television saying all nasty words." She was very upset about my saying that. But the lady asked me, point blank, where did it come from? Take for an example. If you're getting ready to lift something, the first thing you do, if you got sense, is to tighten your ass. Before you tighten that, it automatically tightens your diaphragm. If you don't tighten that, your diaphragm will never get tight.
Does that make it clear enough? Okay. Actually, I'm going to disagree with the part about tightening your diaphragm, but that's really more of a confusion over terms. His idea of the root of the support is absolutely spot on. So, as we start to inhale, we engage the beginnings of our support, which causes the chest to lift up as we fill up with air. Then, as I said in previous videos, we need to keep the chest up for as long as we're playing, despite the natural inclination for it to drop as the air supply runs out. That keeps our breath support in place and allows us to keep our abdominal muscles engaged to better regulate the release of the air. To recap, take a deep natural breath as if you're lifting something heavy, then keep your chest up until you complete your exhalation and need to breathe again. The blow. The way we blow as we're playing can cause a lot of the tension we may encounter, mainly because we tend to blow too hard. I think a large part of that has to do with how we use the word blow in our everyday language. For example, we don't tend to remark that the wind is blowing outside unless it's blowing quite strongly and we can really feel it. Equally, if it's attached to an action we're performing, such as blowing out a candle or blowing up a balloon, it tends to denote that a certain level of force is involved. In actual fact, when we're playing the trumpet, we don't need to move a very large quantity of air at all. Other larger instruments require a bit more, but not as much as we tend to think. It's really not much more air than I'm needing to speak to you right now, and I certainly don't feel as if I'm blowing as I talk. It's really more of a release of air. However, what we do have to do is carefully regulate that release of air to keep it consistent over reasonably long periods. It is still a forced exhalation, much like blowing out a candle, but one that's performed for much longer. We can physically do this because we're not blowing into the open air. Rather, we're blowing into the mouthpiece and the other subsequent tubes that make up the instrument. That's still a somewhat pressurized environment. This is why we practice long tones. We're literally learning to sustain the airflow necessary to play a particular pitch. Long tones are also a great starter exercise for learning to play with less tension. You should work on not only keeping the pitch steady, but also on trying to play each note with the least blowing effort possible. Try to relax and play as easily as you can. If you can minimise the quantity of air you use, it greatly increases the usefulness of abdominal or core compression, which I've described in other videos, for regulating the airspeed and controlling pitch changes. Your breath support is the basis of the mechanism for adding this compression. Minimal air with good support will also help release any excess tension you may have been experiencing. Concentrate on it in particular on your long tones to begin with, then consider it in whatever else you may be practicing, once you get the feel for it. I hope you've enjoyed this video, or at least been given something to think about. Either way, please hit that like button below. It really does make a big difference if you do. I'm here with new videos every week between these trumpet pro tips and the exercise of the week on Mondays, so please subscribe and click the notification bell that pops up so you're notified when a new video is uploaded. I'll see you on the next video. Now, go practice!